I stood up for these and they didn't appreciate it. So when I got locked up, these cheered.
When you say these, who in the
black motherfuckers in the industry. I took on a fight for these clowns because I didn't want them getting robbed. And they crossed.
Snoop Dogg's story can't be told without the men who guarded him, pushed him to fame, and stood shoulder to shoulder with him when things got dangerous. From Big C Styles shaping Snoop's early rise to Tupac turning up the chaos inside Death Row, these figures defined an era that was as thrilling as it was deadly. So today we're diving deep into what really happened to the fiercest players who marked Snoop's most violent chapter. And before anyone else gets a mention, we gotta start with the man who made the empire possible and whose shadow still chills the rap game, Marion Hugh Suge Knight Jr. Born on April 19, 1965 in Compton, California, Suge earned the nickname Sugar Bear as a kid. But trust me, there was nothing sweet about the legacy he built. Standing a massive 6'2" and tipping over 300 pounds, Suge Knight became the intimidating mastermind behind Death Row Records, the powerhouse label that catapulted Snoop Dogg into superstardom. But Suge's road to hip-hop royalty wasn't your average grind. Before the suits and contracts, he was a defensive end at UNLV, lining up with future NFL stars. He even had a short run with the Los Angeles Rams as a replacement player during the 1987 NFL strike. When the football dream faded, Suge switched lanes fast. He jumped into the music world, first working as a bodyguard for stars like Bobby Brown, a job that taught him one thing: power talks louder than talent in this business. Soon, he was promoting concerts, and he knew intimidation was just another form of currency. Then came 1991, the year he co-founded Death Row Records with Dr. Dre and the DOC, sealing a major distribution deal with Interscope. The label exploded when Dre dropped The Chronic in 1992, shaking the whole industry. And when Snoop came through a year later with Doggy Style, it debuted straight at #1, selling over 800,000 copies in the first week. But behind all the success, Suge's methods were as ruthless as his ambitions were sky high. Suge Knight's blood ties ran deep. Every business move he made was stamped with that gang life mentality. His Peru Bloods affiliation didn't just color his choices, it controlled them. Rumor has it he leaned on intimidation to lock artists into contracts they couldn't escape. And who could forget the 1995 Source Awards when he dissed Sean Puffy Combs on live TV? That moment didn't just spark tension, it helped ignite the East versus West Coast feud that would soon claim lives. Snoop and Suge had a wild relationship, powerful but toxic. Death Row gave Snoop the global stage, but behind the fame came non-stop drama, danger, and chaos. By 1998, after years of tension, money issues, and Suge's mounting legal problems, Snoop had enough. He made his escape to Master P's No Limit Records, ready for a clean slate. Soon after, he launched his own label, Doggy Style Records, and later went public, blaming Suge for Tupac's tragic 1996 murder. That accusation shook the entire industry. Then came Suge Knight's dramatic downfall. On January 29, 2015, a shocking scene unfolded. Suge ran over Terry Carter and injured Cleve Bone Sloan in a Compton parking lot.
Comes to y'all and says, we want y'all to be the first album to drop on a new Death Row. So one thing I noticed on the album, I think I got an exclusive copy, I'm not sure, but it says Death Row and Tapes.
Yeah.
Does it say Death Row
Records and Tapes? Is it?
So, I mean, just bringing it back.
He later pleaded no contest to voluntary manslaughter. By 2018, he was sentenced to 28 years under California's brutal 3 strikes law. As of November 2025, Suge remains behind bars at the R.J. Donovan Correctional Facility in San Diego. His empire long gone, his health slipping fast. Reports say he's struggling with blood clots and serious weight problems. Social media lit up in October 2025 with rumors of Suge's early parole for good behavior, but official court records told a different story. He's not eligible for release until October 2034, when he'll be 69 years old. Still, even from prison, Suge keeps his name alive. Through phone interviews and his Breakbeat Media podcast, he's been stirring the pot, speaking on Diddy's legal mess, warning Combs to take responsibility, and hinting that secret tapes exist implicating major stars. Suge Knight wasn't just Snoop's boss, he was his most dangerous ally, the man who turned him into an icon while trapping him in a storm of violence and paranoia. But Suge was only the beginning, because once you step out from the CEO's shadow, you start to see the cracks forming inside Snoop's own crew. No bond broke harder than the one between Snoop Dogg and his own cousin, Daz Dillinger. Family might run deep, but in this game, blood doesn't always mean loyalty. Daz Dillinger, born Delmar Drew Arnold on May 25, 25th, 1973 in Long Beach, California, wasn't just another rapper in Snoop's circle, he was family through and through. His bloodline reads like hip-hop royalty. Cousins with Snoop, R&B icons Brandy and Ray J, and even wrestling star Mercedes Moné. At just 19, Daz got his big shot when Snoop vouched for him and brought him into Death Row Records. Under Dr. Dre's mentorship, Daz learned the kind of production secrets that defined the golden age of West Coast sound. He quietly made his mark early on, crafting beats for the Chronic without even getting credited. But when Snoop dropped Doggy Style, Daz's influence was all over it. He ghost-produced classic tracks like Gin and Juice and Who Am I? What's My Name? Even though Dre's name took the spotlight, Daz didn't stop there. He teamed up with Corrupt to form Thaw Dog Pound, whose 1995 debut album Dog Food went platinum, a West Coast staple.
Snoop and Big C Style had got into a road rage incident on the freeway with what turned out to be a female cop, where they allegedly pointed a gun at.
Then came his real flex, producing 5 tracks on Tupac's All Eyes on Me, including the explosive Ambitions as a Reader and 2 of America's Most Wanted. Daz was a force, no question. But behind the success, cracks were already showing. By the early 2000s, Daz began voicing frustration, feeling pushed aside as Snoop's fame exploded. He claimed the royalties from Doggy Style and his Tupac productions weren't coming in fairly. The tension simmered quietly for years, until Snoop made a power move that reignited everything. In 2022, when Snoop bought Death Row Records for $8.8 million, Daz expected a seat at the table, especially since he owned the masters to some of the label's classics through copyright reversion. But when that call never came, the family loyalty shattered. By August 2025, Daz had enough. He went public, posting a Death Row logo riddled with bullet holes and calling Snoop Snoop Knight. Then, in September, he doubled down, announcing a fiery 3-part diss trilogy called Retaliation, Revenge, and Get Back 3, directly targeting Snoop and the new Death Row. But the real bomb dropped in November 2025. Daz went on Shade 45, claiming Snoop kicked him off Death Row completely after a heated dispute over publishing money. He said during their last conversation, when Daz pressed him about being cut from a gig, Snoop coldly snapped, "You're not part of the team anymore." The betrayal was official, and the family feud had just gone nuclear. Snoop's cousin Daz wasn't about to bow down to anyone, especially when it came to his music. When Snoop asked him to sign over his catalog, Daz flat out refused. He valued his own work, his Tupac royalties, Dog Pound classics, and decades of grind way more than any shiny label perks. As of November 2025, Daz is running his own lane strong under DPG Records, proving he doesn't need Death Row to stay relevant. He dropped Rotation, his 23rd solo album, and 3rd just this year, showing he's still got the fire. His estimated net worth, around $400,000, built from beat royalties, publishing, and pure independent hustle. But here's the wild part. Daz's legacy doesn't come from street violence. It comes from lyrical warfare and studio hits that still slap today. As he told Complex, "You get into it all the time. I ain't going back." That line said it all. Daz chose independence over loyalty gone wrong. While Daz was locked in a battle over respect and ownership, another cousin of Snoop's was fighting a very different war. One fueled by rumors, dark whispers, and conspiracy theories that just wouldn't die. That cousin, Lil Half Dead. Some rappers fade quietly, but others become legends wrapped in mystery. Lil Half Dead, born Donald Dwayne Smith on September 13th, 1974 in Long Beach, was another of Snoop's cousins and a key piece of the early Death Row puzzle. Even his name had weight, inspired by the character Half Dead from the 1979 prison film Penitentiary.
Now we side by side, hitting them up through this whole industry, through this whole world. We hitting them up side by side.
His first big break came when Dr. Dre gave him a shout out on Lil Ghetto Boy from the Chronic. That single moment opened doors, landing him a spot on Dre's 1993 Chronic tour. A year later, in 1994, Lil Half Dead dropped his debut album, The Dead Has Arisen, which climbed to number 52 on Billboard's R&B hip-hop chart. Critics praised its clean production and smooth flow. But by the time his second album, Steel on a Mission, hit in May 1996, things were slipping. Low promo, no major features from family, and Death Row's chaos left him stranded. Then came the storm. As death row crumbled, strange rumors began to swirl, ones that would follow Lil Half Dead for years. In 2012, he dropped Dead Serious, an album that reignited controversy with a shocking cover, a manipulated photo showing a bloody Tupac and Yaki Gaddafi lying in a casket. The image spread like wildfire, sparking wild internet theories claiming Lil Half Dead was somehow tied to Tupac's murder, and that Pac had even stolen his concept. The conspiracy world ran with it, and Lil Half Dead suddenly found himself at the center of one of hip-hop's most haunting mysteries. Rumors about Lil Half Dead only grew wilder with time. Some claim Tupac's Brenda's Got a Baby was inspired by a demo Lil Half Dead once shared, and then things got darker. Death Row's former head of security, Reggie Wright Jr., was even accused of handpicking Lil Half Dead as the alleged shooter in some revenge plot. But let's be real, none of those claims were ever proven. They came straight out of Greg Kading's murder rap book, which mixed insider tips with unverified speculation. Most fans and insiders dismissed the story as pure tabloid noise. Lil Half Dead himself refused to comment, keeping his silence while the rumors swirled. Even with all the controversy, Lil Half Dead didn't let the gossip bury his name. At 51, he's reinvented himself, no longer chasing fame, but building legacy. As CEO of 122 Time Records, he's taken the role of Long Beach's elder statesman, guiding up-and-coming artists while still dropping music that shows he's far from done. His 2025 single Grown Man Business proved he can still spit with authority. His Instagram activity throughout 2025, from March studio clips to August collabs to October throwbacks celebrating the 31st anniversary of his debut, shows a man still proud, still active, and still representing his roots. Lil Half Dead's story mirrors what happened to so many 90s legends. Explosive talent born in chaos, followed by years of quiet grind and self-reinvention. Snoop's superstar glow might have outshined everyone around him, but his cousin's journey stands as proof that the West Coast spirit can't be killed, not even when you're half dead. But to truly understand the wildest era in Snoop's life, you have to go back to where it all started. The streets of Long Beach. Before the fame, before death row, before the chaos, there was one man who shaped Snoop's rise from day one. Big C Style. Some legends live in the spotlight, but others operate from the shadows. And Big C Style was the silent backbone of Snoop's come-up. Born Christopher Bowden in Birmingham, Alabama, and raised in Long Beach, Big C Style was one of Snoop's earliest and most loyal soldiers from the streets. His connection to Snoop started in a moment straight out of a movie. Sometime in the late 80s, Big C spotted a young Calvin Broadus chatting with some girls near the block. Thinking he was trouble, Big C approached him with a pistol drawn. But instead of violence, something real happened. They talked, laughed, and realized they shared the same Long Beach roots.
A big reputation. A local congresswoman once described him as one of the new young black entrepreneurs. Others describe him as a thug. In any event, the death row lifestyle that earned him a big reputation.
That tense face-off turned into a brotherhood that would last decades. After Big C's release from a short jail stint, he was right back by Snoop's side, ready to help turn neighborhood dreams into hip-hop history. Big C Style was more than just a homie. He was the engine behind Snoop's early grind. He turned his own garage into a raw, makeshift studio where legends were born. Late nights in Long Beach saw Snoop, Nate Dogg, and Warren G huddled around the mic, freestyling until sunrise, while Big C Style kept the beats bumping and the block safe. He wasn't just producing, he was the muscle, the mentor, and the man who made sure no one messed with the crew. He even drove Snoop every day to Dr. Dre's Calabasas mansion during the Chronic era, waiting outside like a bodyguard posted on duty while Snoop cooked up classics inside. But life on the streets came with a price. Not long after those legendary garage sessions, Big C Style was caught in a drive-by shooting that nearly took his life. He spent a full year recovering, scarred, but far from broken. When he came back harder. By 1993, Big C Style had put together the LBC Crew, the first group ever executive produced by Snoop and officially signed under Doggy Style Records. Their sound helped shape the vibe of Snoop's Tha Dogfather album, and Big C Style's 19th Street compilations kept the West Coast flame burning bright. But his name got locked in rap history for something far darker, the infamous 1997 Echo Sound Studio Massacre. During a recording session with members of South Central Cartel, gunmen stormed the studio, bullets flying in every direction. Rapper Lil Draws was killed and several others were wounded. In a wild twist of fate, a jammed soda machine blocked the door, saving Big C Style and Daz Dillinger from being shot. That night sealed Big C's rep as a survivor. The streets had tried to take him, but he walked away breathing. Still, the real wounds didn't all come from bullets, some came from business betrayal. By 1996, while Snoop was locked in his death row contracts, Big C Style started noticing cracks in their friendship. He claimed Snoop lowballed him, giving him an A&R title instead of a fair equity partnership, and even pocketed royalties from LBC crew features that Big C helped build. The tension simmered for years, but Big C never stopped hustling. Fast forward to 2025, Big C Style is still standing tall, running 19th Street Records independently. His latest projects, Ghetto Ego, released November 2025, and All In, October 2025, prove he's still got that original Long Beach fire. While he and Snoop have made some peace, throwback photos show respect between them, the scars of greed, bullets, and betrayal still run deep. Big C Style might not be a household name, but in Long Beach, he's legend, the iron backbone behind the Dog Father's throne. Yet even with all his influence, nothing shook Snoop's world like the next chapter. Because when Tupac walked through death row's doors, the whole game changed overnight, and the music turned deadly. When you talk about the mix of fame, danger, and raw emotion that defines Snoop Dogg's deadliest era, one name towers above the rest: Tupac Shakur. Tupac Amaru Shakur, born June 16, 1971, wasn't just another rapper. He was a revolutionary with a mic, a poet, an activist, an actor, and a symbol of the chaos and brilliance that defined the 1990s. His presence at Death Row Records didn't just elevate the label, it supercharged it with fire, danger, and unfiltered truth. When Suge Knight dropped $1.4 million to bail Tupac out of Rikers Island in October 1995, hip-hop's balance of power shifted overnight. Snoop later claimed he was the spark behind that move, saying he told Tupac during a prison visit, "You need to come to death row." That conversation changed rap forever. The partnership that followed between Snoop and Pac gave us some of the most iconic moments in hip-hop: raw studio sessions, untouchable charisma, and unforgettable tracks that defined a generation.
Hold Snoop back, and I see at the time of the deceased, I see him arguing with whomever, and at that time I saw a gun flash.
Okay.
And then they took off.
Their chemistry peaked on All Eyes on Me, especially with the explosive anthem 2 of America's Most Wanted, where both men went bar for bar like outlaws on a mission. But behind the scenes, tension was brewing. Outlaw's member Napoleon later claimed Snoop started to envy Tupac's unstoppable energy and growing spotlight. Meanwhile, Tupac's vicious diss tracks, especially Hit 'Em Up, pushed the East Coast-West Coast feud into deadly territory. As the tension rose, so did the distance between them. In the weeks before his death, Tupac reportedly began pulling away from Snoop, frustrated by mixed loyalties and conflicting alliances. Then came the night that changed everything, September 7th, 1996. Tupac was ambushed in a drive-by shooting on the Las Vegas Strip. He was hit 4 times, twice in the chest, once in the arm, and once in the thigh. After 6 days of fighting for his life, he passed away on September 13th at just 25 years old. For nearly 3 decades, his murder haunted the world as one of rap's coldest cases. Then, in September 2023, a major twist: Dwayne Keefe D. Davis was arrested, accused of orchestrating the hit. Prosecutors allege he coordinated the attack and claimed that Diddy offered a $1 million bounty on Tupac, though Combs' camp has flatly denied it as fiction. The trial has since been pushed to 2026 as investigators chase new leads and potential evidence. For Snoop, the loss never stopped hurting. Years later, he opened up about it with heartbreaking honesty, saying, "One of my biggest regrets is not squashing things with Tupac before he passed. I didn't even get the chance." That regret still lingers, a heavy reminder that in the world of fame and loyalty, even legends can fall to silence and time. Tupac's legacy didn't just live on, it exploded. With over 75 million records sold worldwide and 11 posthumous #1 hits, his voice still echoes through every generation. His most powerful weapon wasn't violence, it was truth. His raw calls for justice and revolution still live through samples and tributes by artists like Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole. For Snoop, Tupac wasn't just another death row affiliate. He was family, a brother who helped turn the label into a cultural empire, but at the highest possible price. Yet behind the platinum plaques and bright stage lights, there were men moving in total darkness, people the public never saw but who made Death Row's empire both feared and untouchable. And one of those men was Aaron Heron Palmer, the enforcer whose name still sends chills through those who remember that era. Unlike Snoop or Pac, Palmer wasn't in front of cameras. He was in the shadows, a figure whispered about more than seen. A high-ranking member of the mob Peru Bloods out of Compton, Palmer served as head of security for Death Row Records, enforcing Suge Knight's will with an iron hand. His reputation as one of Snoop's deadliest affiliates came from street legends claiming he was connected to as many as 17 killings, though none of those stories were ever proven. Still, his myth grew. A man feared for how cold and precise he was, moving through the chaos like a ghost with a mission. Palmer wasn't just security. He was Suge Knight's shadow, the fixer, the handler, the one who made sure Death Row's enemies stayed silent. Engineers and insiders from that time described how getting vetted by Palmer meant everything. When he looked you in the eye and said, "You gotta be with us now," you knew you were officially part of Death Row's inner circle, and there was no turning back. Even though Snoop repped the Rollin' 20 Crips and Palmer was a mob Peru Blood, their connection ran deeper than colors or sets. Under Suge Knight's rule, Death Row became a rare bridge between two rival worlds, all united by money, fame, and fear. Palmer's main role was to protect Snoop and Tupac during their most dangerous days, especially when tensions with Bad Boy Records hit a boiling point. He was there that fateful night on September 7th, 1996, part of the Death Row entourage at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, just hours before Tupac was gunned down. That moment became the beginning of the end for Death Row's dominance. Less than a year later, on June 1st, 1997, the street struck back. Palmer was ambushed while driving his black Toyota 4Runner home from a Death Row party in Compton. Gunmen opened fire, ending the life of the man who once protected everyone else. His death closed a violent chapter, one built on loyalty, power, and blood that stained every part of Death Row's rise and fall. Aaron Heron Palmer's end came just as brutally as the life he once protected. Late one night, while driving through Compton, he stopped at a red light near Rosecrans Avenue and Santa Fe Avenue. And that's when it happened. A dark van crept up beside his black Toyota 4Runner, then chaos exploded. Two gunmen opened fire, unleashing a hail of bullets that shattered the night. Over a dozen rounds tore through his vehicle, striking Palmer multiple times. He died right there at the scene. No ambulance, no warning, just silence after the smoke cleared. Street whispers say it wasn't random. It was payback. Palmer had become a casualty in a Peru civil war that had been brewing under the surface. His mob Peru set was clashing hard with the rival Fruittown Peru over control of territory, drug trade, and death row loyalty. When Palmer was taken out, the streets erupted. Within the next year, at least 5 more of Suge Knight's close associates were killed in retaliation, each death feeding the vicious cycle of revenge. Palmer's story didn't fade away. It became part of hip-hop folklore. His death was recreated in the 2018 series Unsolved and later examined in Greg Kading's book, Murder Rap. His legacy is a grim reminder of the darker side of the rap empire, where those protecting the throne often ended up as victims of the same power they defended. These were the men who made Death Row's legend untouchable and then paid the ultimate price for it. But Palmer wasn't the only soldier to fall in the chaos. The war that surrounded Death Row didn't stay in Compton. It spread across cities, crews, and coasts, eventually setting off a feud that would shake hip-hop from the inside out. Every war has its first casualty, and in the Death Row versus Bad Boy saga, that man was Big Jake Robels. Born Jahassan Jamal, Big Jake Robels, he was a respected OG from the Campanella Park Peru Bloods and one of Suge Knight's most trusted muscle.
Killed us. They had a sniper sniping from like a mile away, and we was in the trailer smoking a blunt, and Snoop got up to pass me the blunt, and it was like, I was like, I heard something, and then and the window shattered. And so I grabbed Snoop and threw him on.
Before the bright lights and fame, Big Jake was already a force in Compton's underground economy, running cannabis spots that supplied both locals and early players in the music industry. By 1994, Big Jake was moving between the streets and the studio, co-founding Hollow Point Records with DJ Quick, a label distributed through Death Row itself. His role in the empire wasn't about verses, it was about protection. He wasn't Snoop's musical partner, but he was part of the same machine that kept artists like Snoop, Dre, and Tupac safe when things got dangerous. Whether it was backstage, on tour, or in hostile cities, Big Jake made sure Death Row's roster could move without fear. Snoop would later speak about men like Robels, not as thugs, but as the silent enforcers who made the West Coast run when the whole world was watching. These were the soldiers who kept the empire alive, even when it meant standing face to face with death itself. The night that changed everything for Death Row and hip-hop itself went down on September 23rd, 1995, inside a packed Atlanta nightclub during Jermaine Dupri's birthday bash. It was supposed to be a celebration, but with Death Row and Bad Boy Records both in the building, the tension was electric. Just weeks earlier, Suge Knight had publicly embarrassed Puff Daddy on stage at the 1995 Source Awards, and the beef was still sizzling. All it needed was a spark, and that spark came fast. As the night wore on, Suge's right-hand man, Big Jake Robels, confronted Anthony Wolf Jones, Puff's longtime bodyguard and street enforcer. Words turned into shoves, shoves turned into fists, and within seconds, the party erupted into chaos. Then, gunfire, multiple shots rang out in the middle of the crowd. Robels was struck several times and rushed to Grady Memorial Hospital, where he fought for his life for nearly 2 weeks before passing on October 6, 1995, at just 29 years old. Police named Anthony Wolf Jones as the main suspect in the shooting, but the case quickly fell apart. Witnesses backed out, both coasts applied pressure, and the murder investigation went cold. The streets handled their own justice, because in November 2003, Wolf himself was shot and killed outside Club Chaos in Atlanta. What started as a heated exchange between two crews became the first major bloodshed in the East Coast-West Coast feud, the moment that turned lyrical disses into deadly warfare. Robels' death sent shockwaves through the industry. It was the first domino that eventually led to the tragic murders of Tupac and Biggie, two friends turned icons caught in the middle of a feud that had spiraled out of control. Months later, Snoop tried to calm the storm, appearing alongside Puff Daddy at a 1996 press conference, calling for peace and an end to the violence. But by then, the damage was done. Nearly 3 decades later, Big Jake Robels is remembered as the spark that ignited hip-hop's most dangerous chapter, a man whose death forever changed the game. But not every one of Snoop's deadliest affiliates ended up in a grave. Some stood right beside him when his own life was on the line. One of those men found himself at the heart of a murder trial that almost destroyed Snoop's career before it even truly began. McKinley Malik Lee. Back in 1993, Malik Lee wasn't just Snoop's muscle, he was his shield. Born in Chicago and raised in Iowa, Lee stood a massive 6'5" and weighed over 250 pounds, the kind of presence that made people think twice before starting trouble. He was Snoop's personal bodyguard during the height of Death Row's dominance, always nearby, always ready. But one deadly night in Los Angeles would put both men in the crosshairs of the law and on the front page of every newspaper in the country. Before becoming known as Snoop Dogg's protector, McKinley Malik Lee had completely different dreams. He once wanted to join law enforcement. But life took a sharp turn, and he found himself in the world of private security instead. In 1992, while working as a bouncer at the Red Onion nightclub, Lee first crossed paths with Snoop Dogg and Suge Knight. The connection was instant. His size, presence, and composure caught their attention. Just weeks later, Suge offered him a full-time position as Snoop's personal bodyguard. Lee moved into an apartment right next door to Snoop in Culver City, forming a bond that went beyond business. He was more like family. But that loyalty would be tested in the most tragic way possible. On August 25th, 1993, in the Palms neighborhood of Los Angeles, a minor parking dispute turned into a deadly encounter. According to reports, Snoop and Lee ran into Philip Woldemariam, a 20-year-old man alleged to be connected to a local gang. Lee later claimed that Woldemariam reached for a weapon, and in a split-second reaction, Lee fired his unlicensed 9mm pistol 6 times. Woldemariam was hit and died shortly after the shooting. Within 2 days, Snoop and Lee turned themselves in to the LAPD. Snoop was charged as an accessory after the fact, while Lee was hit with a first-degree murder charge and denied bail. He spent 18 long months in a maximum security facility waiting for trial, his fate hanging by a thread as the media painted the story like a Hollywood crime movie. When the trial finally began on November 27, 1995, the courtroom became a circus. Death Row spared no expense, bringing in a dream team defense led by none other than Johnny Cochran, the same powerhouse attorney who had just won O.J. Simpson's case. Cameras flashed, headlines screamed, and the world waited to see if Snoop Dogg, then one of the biggest rappers alive, would walk free or fall with his bodyguard. After 6 tense days of jury deliberation, the verdict dropped on February 20th, 1996. Both men were acquitted of all murder charges. Fans celebrated. Snoop released "Murder Was the Case," and the Death Row empire roared louder than ever. But for Lee, the victory was bittersweet. The spotlight, the stress, and the betrayal he felt behind the scenes changed him for good. Shortly after the trial, Lee chose to cut ties with Snoop, saying his time as protector had run its course. His life spiraled in the years that followed. In 1997, he was convicted of felony stalking after an incident involving an ex-girlfriend. Then decades later, in 2025, Lee resurfaced on the Art of Dialogue podcast, breaking his silence. He claimed the famous Snoop trial was really his trial, and that the media twisted everything to frame it as another story of rap and gang violence. They erased me, he said bitterly. Lee insists he took the heat to save Snoop's career, but in the end, he walked away feeling betrayed by the very empire he once protected with his life. After giving up his freedom to save Snoop, McKinley Malik Lee expected loyalty in return, but instead, he got silence. No financial help, no public thank you, nothing. It was the kind of heartbreak that cuts deeper than prison time. Then, in March 2025, the unthinkable happened. Lee finally reconnected with Suge Knight from behind bars. It was their first conversation in nearly 30 years, and it hit hard. Suge openly praised Lee's loyalty, saying his sacrifice paved the way for Doggy Style and All Eyes on Me. Two albums that changed hip-hop forever. For the first time in decades, someone finally gave Lee his flowers. Now 55 years old, Lee has turned his pain into purpose. He stepped into a new lane as a motivational speaker and author, using his story to mentor young people trying to escape the same streets that once trapped him. Still, he carries one wish, a real sit-down with Snoop, not for revenge, but for respect. As Lee said himself, I saved his life. That's my story. But Snoop's world wasn't built only on protectors. It was powered by lyrical assassins, rappers whose bars hit with the same intensity they carried on the streets, and none captured that raw duality better than Trey D, the man who could kill a track and, if pushed, might handle things the same way in real life. Trey D, born Alonzo Smith on April 27, 1966 in Long Beach, California, has long been respected as one of the West Coast's hardest voices, a product of the insane Crips with a pen sharp enough to cut glass. His storytelling was unfiltered and gritty, the kind that came from experience, not imagination. In 1993, his breakout moment came with the track Serial Killer from Snoop's Doggy Style, a verse so raw it instantly set the murderous tone of the album. By 1999, after Snoop's messy exit from Death Row, Trey D joined forces with Snoop and Goldie Locke to form Tha Issa Daz. Their debut album, Deuces and Treys the Old-Fashioned Way, smashed the charts, peaking at number 4 on Billboard and reminding everyone the West Coast wasn't done yet. But as the fame grew, Trey D's street past refused to stay buried, and soon his real-life battles caught up to his lyrical ones. Trey D's story, like so many around Snoop, blurs the line between legend and reality, where loyalty, power, and pain all collide. From protectors like Lee to poets like Trey, every name in Snoop's circle shaped his rise, but also carried the weight of that violent era. And that's the untold story behind Snoop Dogg's deadliest affiliates, the soldiers, the family, and the friends who built the empire from the ground up, sometimes paying with their freedom and sometimes with their lives. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and drop a comment. Let's keep the conversation alive and uncover more of hip-hop's untold history.